Resident services is a pretty new aspect of Mission Albuquerque, pretty new department. So originally, we began work in an apartment complex called Vista Grande, which has since been renamed to Copper Terrace. And the reason we began doing work at Vista Grande was because one of our pastoral families at Sandia Church of the Nazarene moved into that community. They had struggled with a time of unemployment and a downturn in the economy and ended up losing their home. And their home was not far from that apartment complex, and moving into that apartment complex allowed their kids to continue to go to the same elementary school that they went to. And it was a subsidized apartment complex. So they moved in, and that was helpful for their financial situation. But immediately, and they really were not folks that had lived in poverty. But the people surrounding them in that apartment complex, many of them were in poverty, and they really began to care for their neighbors. And I think probably one of the things that started things off early on was that we got a call. Well, this family got a call from the apartment manager who said that they would like for somebody to come and pray over the office because they felt that the office was somehow haunted or inhabited by spirits that didn't mean well. So that's not something that is a part of our ministerial training or our doctrine. We don't perform exorcisms or anything like that. But one of our pastoral staff, in addition to a member of this family, went and prayed over the office and just encouraged the apartment manager. And then I think not too long after that, the member of this family that had been there and a part of that and was kind of really starting to feel a call, I think, to this work, started prayer walks around the apartment complex, and basically was praying for the complex, praying for the families, and ultimately, felt like God was calling her to bring people to church from that community. So she started bringing kids in her own car, in the minivan, and then ultimately needed a church van to bring kids to church from that apartment complex. But was feeling like it was not enough. The parents were not coming. She was inviting the parents to church too, but they weren't coming. And so she started trying to have a Bible study in her home and in her apartment there. And that Bible study had its ups and downs. It didn't really go as well as I think she had hoped. People were not necessarily really excited about coming into each other's homes in that community. And so she wasn't getting a lot of traction with starting that Bible study. And so, at some point, after all of this prayer, she had a discussion with the apartment manager who offered to give her keys to the apartment office in order for her to be able to do Bible study in there. And that Bible study in the apartment office grew into a full-fledged worship service. And pre-COVID, we were running about 35 in worship every week there on Monday nights in that apartment complex office. At some point during that process, we had noticed, we were trying to store everything, load in, load out, store it in closets, and we had noticed this empty office, and we started asking the managers about, what's this office about? And they said, well, this doesn't belong to us, it belongs to the owners, so we can't really give you permission. And we had interacted with the owners a little bit, but understanding their mission and understanding what that office was supposed to be, I began to realize we had been sending some reports to them, and I began to realize that the sort of apartment complex that this was supposed to have certain activities and things like that, and they had struggled to keep an activities director in there, because they'd hire somebody, and it's a difficult work. They would hire somebody and they would try to get things done, but kids are not responsive, families are not responsive. Somebody who is not used to working with this population doesn't maybe struggles to get traction in getting activities attended. They have them available, but nobody comes, and that can be discouraging. And sometimes the kids can be poorly behaved, and then that person would quit. And so this office had been empty since we had been there, and I wrote a letter and said, hey, I noticed we've been sending you reports about all we're doing. Is this office something that's available to us? And mainly we wanted it for storage, to store our stuff, so we weren't loading in and loading out as much, and we could keep more materials there for work in the community. And we were doing all of this completely volunteer, really without thought of what that how that would be monetized or funded at all. And the family that was there gave a lot of hours of their life to it and was really sacrificial. And I remember I had mentioned that, hey, I'd love it if someday this was a full-time position, if someday you were able to do this work and get paid for it. So a couple things happened. First of all, COVID hit, and we weren't able to use the office complex anymore, because how many people can you fit in there legally, and liability and all this stuff. And so there were some Bible studies continued in the home of the family that lived there. But coming out of COVID, what happened was the owners got a new, as I understand it, federal grant that enabled them to completely remodel the whole facility. They basically rebuilt the facility over the course of a year, and moved some people out while they were rebuilding, and then moved them back in, had temporary housing for them. But in the process of that, the family that had started this work no longer lived there, was no longer able to live there. Their income had gone up, and they had been kind of grandfathered in for a while, but it turned out they weren't able to stay. But at the end of all that, I was contacted by the resident services director of Yes Housing, and she said, we'd like for you guys to continue the work that you were doing pre-COVID, and we've got a budget for you now. Because of this rebuild, we have grant funding, and we're ready to fund you. And I didn't say yes right away, although this was really something that had been my dream and vision. As I saw this developing, that I thought this could happen. But I didn't say yes, because at that time, the person who had started that work was not really sure if they were ready to continue. Burnout and trauma and things like that really had an impact. And so I wasn't sure if we had somebody who was willing to step into that role. And I was contacted by Rebecca, and Rebecca said, I really actually do think that this is what God is calling me to do. And at that time, she was one of our daycare directors, and she felt like this is what she was being led to do. And part of that had to do with, she was already doing something like this at a different apartment complex, much the same way that this other family had there at Vista Grande. She had family members living in St. Anthony's apartment complex, and they started working, the teen group at the church started showing movies out there and playing soccer and doing crafts and things like that, and doing work in that community, which was very similar. And so she really felt like this is what she was being led to do. So she became our first actual paid part-time resident services coordinator and ultimately director. And I remember telling her at that time that I felt like this could be something that could grow into, and I think the words that I used was, someday I think resident services will be bigger than Kingdom Builders. In other words, at that time we had like 12 staff at Kingdom Builders, and we were impacting 60 some students pre-COVID, and I thought that we could have as many as 12 staff at resident services and probably impacting more families than we were impacting at Kingdom Builders. And so she started out at Copper Terrace, which is what Vista Grande had been renamed to. And we did that for a year or two coming out of COVID. And then she did such a good job that we began being contacted by Yes Housing to do more. And so we had the opportunity within a month of each other to start work at Imperial Apartments downtown. And then Nuevo Atrisco, which was a brand new apartment complex on the west side. And Imperial had a rooftop garden, which is pretty state of the art, and they needed a manager for that. So we also started James, who has a real heart for gardening and that sort of work, community gardens. James has been doing community garden work in Kingdom Builders Daycare and learning garden work. He had done it at Emerson Elementary School through the Shine Partnership. He'd worked with, I think it was Belen Central Elementary School, doing a learning garden there. And so he took up managing that garden. So in the years since, which has been about 3 years since that, we have sort of increased our work with resident services as well as community gardens and learning gardens. So as of today, James not only does the garden there at Imperial, there's a garden at Nuevo Atrisco, they're opening up a garden at Copper Terrace. He started this year doing work in the community garden at Solar Via apartment complex. And then ultimately overseeing the gardens, the community gardens for Yes Housing apartment complexes throughout the state, which includes in Los Alamos and Hobbs and Roswell, where they have other folks that are not associated with Mission Albuquerque who are overseeing those gardens, but he has taken on the role of overseeing those gardens, overseeing the folks that run those gardens. Further, we received a contract late in 2025 to begin work at Solar Via with resident services, and then at a new apartment complex, Calle Cuarta. We are still in talks about the possibility of doing another apartment complex, I believe in the South Valley, and some things like that. And these are all primarily with Yes Housing. Now, we've done some work with St. Anthony Apartments out beyond Yes Housing, and I believe that someday then there's going to be an open door for us to go into housing complexes owned by other companies as well, doing the same sort of thing. But it's been a real powerful opportunity to put a caring person in a community, and we help people file for food stamps. We help people get connected with daycares or other needs that they have. And we've had the opportunity to run summer programs with the kids of the communities, and using teens to staff those summer programs. As of today, we have 4 staff that are at least part-time through resident services and our community gardens department. We hired 2 interns last summer to help us with the gardens during peak growing season, and those were teenage interns, which were really, really helpful. And so this is a department that is constantly growing, and as of the last 3 months, we've added 2 more apartment complexes, and it just keeps growing. So I'm excited about the future of what resident services will be in not just Albuquerque probably, but in all of New Mexico.